There we go, lovely. Okay, well, welcome to this session. It's about whole school reading approach. So the aims of the session, hopefully you'll be able to understand what a whole school approach to reading looks like, identify effective strategies to foster a culture of reading for pleasure and purpose, and reflect on your current provision and plan actionable next steps to strengthen consistency and impact. If at any point you've got any questions, if you pop your hand up on there, I can answer them, because there's only a couple of us, so we can talk through anything at all that you need. So I'm Sarah. I'm literacy lead and early years lead at the Federation of Blenheim Road and Coed Primary. We're two schools that are federated in Cwmbran, so operationally we work as one school with the same leadership team. Coed is 2 form entry and Blenheim is 1.5 entry, and you can see from the stats up there, they are quite different settings as well, but just so you have a little background about us. So I wanted to start with kind of where we are now. So we've been on a really long journey to get here. So I wanted to share with you, and I felt it was really important to share where we are now, but how we got there as well, and those steps that we took, and break that down for you a little bit. We aren't perfect ourselves now. We're always striving to be better and for our children to be better readers. But I'm really proud, and we are really proud of our journey we've been on, because reading and just reading for pleasure is just so part of our culture now. So we use Read Write Inc as a scheme for our phonics, and accelerated readers track those off Read Write Inc. If you don't know what AR is, it's basically a program that organises books by levels. The children read those books within their level and then take a quiz. And from that quiz, you get loads and loads of data, more than you can actually do anything with. But the main things we use is reading age and lots of comprehension data. And it can also give you a breakdown of the focus skills each individual child needs to work on, the focus reading skills. And prior to this, we basically had no way of tracking these kinds of things, or it was very sporadic, like one class would do this, one class would do that. So it's really brought in a lot of consistency for us. Something we do now is we really relentlessly kind of monitor every child closely to ensure that they're progressing in a way that's appropriate to them. And I say appropriate to them because we try and really use inclusive language so that our ALN children are included in our monitoring, and they're represented as well. We offer a supportive model, coaching model for both Read Write Inc and AR. We're really lucky because, as well as my role, we've got 2 TLR holders for a Read Write Inc lead and an AR lead. And that's had a huge impact. And I'll talk through all of that a little bit as well later on. Our Read Write Inc lead is a HLTA. She's out of class full time. And we have an AR lead who's a year 5 teacher, and she gets time out of class. So our Read Write Inc lead supports and coaches TAs and teachers during Read Write Inc sessions. She undertakes monitoring. She assesses all of the children, so they've got a consistent person that assesses them. Sometimes when it's class-to-class assessment, you want the best for your kids, so sometimes we maybe fill in some blanks for them. So we found having one consistent person for assessment was just really useful and fair. And then she does all the groupings, all the resourcing for the groups. She delivers intervention then as well to identify children. And that is alongside the expectation that each class does intervention as well for those who aren't maybe progressing the way that we would hope or expect for that individual child. So like I said, we really do invest heavily in reading in our school because they both have TLRs for that role. But we also we refresh every year texts in our libraries, and you can see a picture of our libraries there, and they get really battered, our best loved books, so we replace those and refresh those each year, or as and when is needed, to be honest, and just get new books to excite them. And like I said, we've just got that culture now that they genuinely get excited when there's a book delivery. And then we've had Estyn in 2024, and they said that there is a strong focus on reading development with a consistent approach to improving pupils' knowledge and letter sounds and comprehension skills across the Federation. And as a result, most pupils develop their reading skills well. So I kind of wanted to put that in there as that caveat of actually, you know, it has been recognised that what we've done has made a really big impact in our schools. Every day at the same time in both of our schools, every single child reads for 30 minutes. Okay, so Read.Inc are streamed across the whole school. When we first started this, obviously we had some older Key Stage 2 children come into kind of like younger groups, but we really lent into that, in that we were like, but if you work really hard, like, we can move you up. And it became so much part of our culture that just didn't become an issue. Obviously we had 1 or 2 children that were maybe a little bit more sensitive to it, and obviously we dealt with that sensitively, but the majority of them, and there wasn't loads, but just whilst we were navigating that initial stage, that implementation, there were a few, but we moved them out very quickly and moved them on very quickly. So it is whole school streaming. So if a child's in a Read.Inc group, they go off to that. If they're off the Read.Inc scheme, they go to their AR group. And in AR, they run a guided reading style session. So for example, a child who reads a level 2 book on a Monday would read in a group, whilst all the other children read independently. So the children will be getting a guided reading session every week, and they draw out those explicit reading skills. But then they also get 4 days a week to explore their own reading interests, and that reading for pleasure culture that we really want to maintain, because it was that balance of, okay, we've got that culture, but now there's still some reading skills that we still really need to develop. So we do track data quite closely. Are you okay, Leanne, to admit them? Thank you. So we have a Read.Inc tracker and an AR tracker. So this is an example of our AR tracker that we use. It's actually our newer tracker, so it's a little bit more detailed, and we've tried to consider things that do make an impact and that wider holistic picture of the child. So are they still on Read.Inc? So you can go on it from yellow, and that makes an impact. And perhaps as well, if they are considered ALN, and that is an important part of the picture. So we track it every half term, and we update their reading level and how it corresponds to their chronological age. And once they can go on AR, it's from when they're in yellow in Read.Inc, and actually it's so motivating for them when they start realizing it's not just about kind of decoding and reading Read.Inc books. Actually, there's choice out there. That was a really big shift of excitement for our children, that they realise, oh my gosh, I can pick books that are of interest to me. And so part of when we stocked all our AR library was having a really wide variety. We did surveys from the children of what they like to read, and tried to get that balance of fiction and non-fiction as well. And then our Read.Inc data, we track, so we've actually moved to the online tool. It still pretty much presents this way, but it is a very simple tracker, but it does the job. We moved to the online tool because there is an assessment tool for non-verbal children. So again, we're always trying to have that inclusive practice. So we have moved to that, and it does, kind of like AR does, creates lots of data for you. Basically, it groups for you, and it shows you where all the children's gaps are. So our Read.Inc lead and our AR lead both monitor this data really closely, and any children that aren't making the progress maybe we'd expect, they just have that initial check-in with teachers, and it's not meant to be like a telling off or anything like that. We know a supportive model is far more successful for everyone. So it is just that little check-in, because often we find as well, some children have a wobble on assessments and actually they've got something really big going on at home, and that's an important part of that picture for that child. So we never just treat it as kind of cold data. So it sometimes maybe might be that actually when we join up our monitoring and we look at learning walks, maybe a little bit of coaching and mentoring is needed for that specific teacher. And we'll just follow that through again. It's a really supportive model. It may be that the child kind of came in lower and has never really caught up. So it's just those kind of things. It's that, again, it's that holistic picture of the child. And it's just about that constant conversation between the Redirect Inc. and AR leads and staff. And we also collaborate a lot with the ALNCO because sometimes it's not the right fit, Redirect Inc. We've tried something, we've tried lots of intervention, and perhaps actually there's something else going on there. So I did have a very, very short 20-second clip. It's not working, unfortunately, in our little tech check, but all it was a video to show you what it looked like. It was a very quick, sped up video of how every single child in our school is engaged in reading, and how that has been really powerful for us. That streaming of every child for 30 minutes a day. It's just non-negotiable. It's like sacrosanct. No one can cancel it, no one can change it. If there's someone off poorly who takes a Redirect Inc. group, we find a way, we merge groups. Sometimes SLT has even hopped in and taken a group. We can't leave it to chance, so we don't. But it was just to display that every child is engaged with reading. You could see children weaving in and out of their classrooms, accessing the library independently, and that's all part of that culture that we've built now. And our inclusive practice, we're so passionate about making sure that progress is appropriate to all children and captured appropriately for all children. And we know that some non-verbal children can read. It's just our job to find a way to support them. So I had a little clip here. I realised I said his name in the clip, so I've removed it. But basically, it's just a little boy. He's in reception, he's non-verbal, and we were helping him to succeed with reading by initially, he just starts off by matching the sounds, and we model the sounds to him, and he starts matching them. And then he's able to match them in words with you just orally saying the word to him. And that was the same way that this young man started in nursery with us. He was completely non-verbal, and he had intensive speech and language support. And that's a clip of him reading and reading beautifully. And that's just because we've been inclusive. We've found a way to teach him, rather than, I think sometimes we assume non-verbal children, they can't read. Sometimes they can. So, and in the video as well, you'd see that a huge part of it is staff know the children so well. And it's just a really lovely clip. You will be able to see that clip when I upload or Kath uploads the PowerPoint onto the file, so you will be able to watch it. But moving on to how did we get here then? Basically, it kind of started off in 2018. We had ESDIN recommendation. Both schools required improvement in literacy, Coidiva specifically reading. So with that, we had a new executive head teacher in 2019 as well, and he made reading a priority, basically. He was very passionate about it. He'd previously had AR in his old school and he wanted to bring it over. And I'd really say that this is key to making a whole school approach work, is every single person has to be on board with it. And it really needs to be a priority, SDP priority if you can, because it takes PL, it takes a lot of PL sessions, it takes time to set up, it takes investment and a lot of coordination. And there are ways around where you can try and be savvy with money, but it does take time and coordination. So getting everyone on board is really, really important. And it did remain on our SCP for a couple of years whilst we were embedding everything. When I got the role of literacy lead, one of the first things that we did was retrain everybody in the entire school in Read Write Inc. And it was really funny because we had so many grumbles initially from like upper key stage 2 staff, and I kind of look back now and I think I can't believe there was ever a time when not every single staff member knew how to teach a child to read. But I think it's quite common in primary schools because they're kind of at the other end of the school. But now it's so part of our culture, that we really can't believe that that was ever how we did it, you know. And I was doing a lot of professional reading around reading and how to make it better at the time. And this book was excellent, Closing the Reading Gap by Alex Quigley. And he's also got Closing the Vocab Gap and Closing the Writing Gap. They're both fab as well if you are literacy leads. And he basically said that you need to have daily acts of reading, like a whole school approach, and high quality text. So it was kind of the things that we know, but maybe didn't know how to articulate to anyone else. So we knew he basically inspired me that, right, we're all having whole school reading assemblies that are just for pure enjoyment of books. We need to invest in really high quality texts and lots of them. And then again, it was just that reinforcement of actually it has to be a whole school approach. We can't do this any other way for this to be successful. So I held a working party. And like I said, this was like back in 21, 22, I want to say. So yeah, probably 2021. And it was just about staff who wanted to attend. And if you compare to that first slide of where we are now, this was actually what we looked like. This was after our working party. This was like the successful end. So this, I just want you to see what a journey it really is, because this was best practice for us then by summer 2022. And it was so sporadic. It was optional. So it was only if people opted in, and it was what people could get hold of. And I think that really captures what a journey we've been on, because this was the good practice, you know. And it was only 5 teachers, I think, that joined in on it. But it really shouldn't be left to chance. So we didn't leave it to chance. And this is where we, I think, really tightened up then and really became cohesive as a school and in implementing that whole school approach. So the important thing about the whole school approach is no one can opt out and everyone is held accountable. And hopefully, though, if you pitch it correctly, everyone wants to do it because they understand the impact that it has on children. And I shared a lot of stats with staff in the early days about the impact of reading and like how poor literacy skills have a really direct impact with a child's life chances and their achievement in life. And we kind of laugh now, but I would always put this on the board in our hall, this enormous screen, like reading saves lives, and be really dramatic about it. But we do laugh about it now, but I think that's because people get it, and it meant that it came from everyone's own motivation rather than just being told you have to do this. And of course we all know that, we all know reading's really important, but it was just trying to articulate how important it was. And I also shared these quotes with staff that I know resonated with a lot of our staff members. So reading proficiency is the most significant predictor of high school graduation and career success. And reading for pleasure is more important for children's cognitive development than their parents' level of education, and is a more powerful factor in life achievement than socioeconomic background. So it's so powerful. It's so powerful, and you know, I'm just so passionate about it and the impact we have, and that's why it's that kind of non-negotiable thing, and why we monitor it so closely, because we cannot leave it to chance. But we also looked actually at some Stark data about the financial impact on our society that poor literacy skills have, which I think quite a lot of people aren't aware of. And these are just things that if you need to kind of like get staff on board to get them to really understand just how serious it is in those early days, and then you can stop because it gets too much afterwards. If everyone's kind of like, all right, that's it, enough. We've had all of that. So we used to really focus our thinking and our plans, we used Simon Breakspeare's rapid action cycles. I don't know if anyone uses those. They are really useful, especially early implementation of things like this. So you basically focus on one priority for an entire term or until it's achieved. And you write a clarify canvas like this. And it just keeps you focused and it keeps you accountable. Everything is measurable. So it gives you a really clear measure of your achievement as well. And so it was exactly what we needed, because obviously introducing a whole school approach to reading is enormous. And it was like, how can we even start? So we actually, based on those quotes and knowing that reading for pleasure, we know that the will drives the skill, that we started with reading for pleasure. So our first one was all about reading for pleasure. So what did we want to have? We wanted to create a reading for pleasure culture where children love reading. We wanted to, as a byproduct really, improve reading ages because we've created that reading for pleasure culture within our schools. Then what problems are we trying to solve? So there's very indifferent attitudes towards reading from a large amount of children, not high enough quality texts or a system in place to improve it as well. There was poor reading ages and there was nothing to support staff with it as well. So then when we thought about what changes can we make that will result in improvement, so we invested in Accelerated Reader and created an AR team with TLRs. And that whole school commitment, those that were off Read.Inc would go to an AR, the AR group, and those that were still on Read.Inc would go to their Read.Inc group. Everyone reading at the same time. And then we had every Friday a reading assembly where a teacher just read them a story, and it was just about pure enjoyment. And then how will we judge whether or not we've been successful? So the quantitative data, children exceeding expectations in terms of reading ages, so reflected in the data produced from AR. And we were ambitious with our language because it's not even at that point like maybe half, maybe a bit more were meeting expectations, but we just want to be really ambitious for our children and the qualitative data. So that change in culture of a school, children excited about reading, building that love of reading. That's harder to capture, that's harder to measure, but it's that feeling, isn't it? And I think we all understand that feeling. You feel it when you go into a setting. And then once we got the reading for pleasure bit done, then we focused on the phonics side of it, the decoding side of it. So what impact did we want to have? So we wanted 100% of non-ALN children making the expected progress within Read.Inc and off by the end of year 2, and 100% of ALN children making progress appropriate to their needs. Again, we wanted to have that inclusive language for them because it's so individual, the progress. Any children still on Read.Inc in year 5 and 6 to be off by Christmas 2022. Now, the reason we'd added that in is such a hangover from COVID. There was quite a few in that year group, so we had some really intensive intervention to get them off. And the problem we were trying to solve, children not making expected progress within Read.Inc, falling behind, Key Stage 2 children not accessing the curriculum due to poor reading levels. So we returned to streaming, which, to explain that, we stopped streaming because of COVID. We had to do it in class. It didn't work, and very quickly we wanted to get back to streaming because we knew it was more effective. A Read.Inc lead to be appointed and then responsible for taking those half-termly assessments as well, because that one consistent person was far more reliable. And then I can't quite see this because I've got a navigate forward box showing up on mine, but I think it's coaching and mentoring, intervention, and then knowing how we'd be successful, that those children we said would be off will be off, and the percentage of children making expected progress to increase, and that would just be reflected in all of our data. So we really consistently revisited the why. We had loads of PL behind it as well. We held loads of special reading events. We joined everyone, all of the crazy like upside down reading, those kind of things that kind of seem like gimmicks, but actually in those early stages when you are trying to hook people on and onto reading, they're not gimmicky, they're fun, and you kind of want lots of fun and excitement around it at the beginning. We went to the library, we got every reception child a library card. The library staff came in. We celebrated when new books arrived with the children. We've got a long shared classroom between all the classes, and we'd be like, books are here, and they'd be like, yay. We did loads of surveys. We were always asking the children, what books would you like, ordering loads. So we invested a lot of money in it. And this took a lot of manpower to set up as well. You can see this was like phase kind of, I don't even know what phase, I couldn't even, phase 2, 3 of the Kallax units were up. Then we needed to fill them. We needed to label every single book on the AR system. And I remember we had inset days of just staff in rooms, labeling books, scanning in books to our system, organising books. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my gosh, this is such a slog. What if it's not worth it? And I can just say it's so worth it now. The impact it's had on our children, their love for reading, their independence with reading as well, like coming out to the library, just picking the book they fancy in their level, hearing them talking to their friends as readers. It's so wonderful to see, and the data as well. You know, the data's really improved. Rewriting basically became sacrosanct. You were not allowed to ever cancel it for any reason, because I think that it's really easy to fall into that, isn't it? Of like, oh, so and so's not in today. Let's just cancel it. Like, it's only one day. It really adds up quickly. So if that's an easy change you can make, is do that. It's just merge your groups, find a way, get your SLT on board to pop in and take a group. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least it's happening. It was just no excuses really anymore. I think that was the major thing. And we all held each other accountable. And like I said before, it was because everyone understood kind of what was at stake. Everyone understood the impact. And yeah, it was slowly, changes became really visible around the school. Children's attitudes started to change. Data started to improve. So we knew all our measures we set that it was working. And then I suppose Estyn was that nice extra little validation at the end, because it wasn't that we needed it, because we knew it was right for our school and we knew it was working for our children. And there was that completely different feeling around reading when you would walk into the school and visitors would come in and say like, wow, like they're so independent, and just, yeah, it's something you can't measure feeling. But it was felt. Yeah, and it was the recommendations that were still, even now, years later, you still hear them recommending text to each other, and yeah, some of that hype dies down, I think, if they're not like as absolutely buzzing as they were when new boxes of books arrived, but there's still that excitement. It's just not quite as we actually had in the early days, one of our SLT members, she was in a meeting and she came out like running out. She thought something had gone like catastrophically wrong and there was like some big fight or something, but new books had just arrived and they were all screaming in excitement. So we're not quite like that screaming in excitement anymore, but they still love reading, and that's the important bit. And yeah, I think we continue now still to hold high expectations. We've just not dropped the ball, and although it's not on our SDP now this year because it's so embedded, we've still got a TLR holder for Accelerated Reader. We've still got a TLR holder for Read Write Inc. And the monitoring they do every half term, and it's really relentless, but it's a supportive model then for staff. We run drop-in sessions all the time, refresher training. We just had some new refresher training with Read Write Inc. And we just still have those high expectations, but it's just so embedded now. And like I said, it took us a while to get there. And if anyone, I know a few people came in a bit later. This was the first slide where I said Eston had come in and they said that, you know, well, I'll just read it, the strong focus on reading development with a consistent approach to improving pupils' knowledge and letter sounds and comprehension skills across the Federation. And as a result, most pupils develop their reading skills well. And this is what in Blenheim, this is one of our schools, one of our libraries looks like. And it runs down the whole length of, it's a corridor, essentially. We call it the shared classroom. And I'll actually flick back for those who were a little bit late.
Okay, just to show starting to explain this.
Yeah, okay. Well, just to say as well, we're really open to any visits, especially if you are setting up AR and you want to see what it could look like and have just a chat about things. I can put you in touch as well with our AR lead if that would be helpful. We're always open to having visits and helping people set up with reading. So